We are live. We are talking touchdowns. The channel is Nuke the House. I'm your host, Astaire, joined today by Tyler Hicks and JC Zargo. JC, overall, your thoughts for this exciting Week 17 matchup?
Yeah, man, I'm depressed. I hate that we only got 2 more weeks of regular season football left. I hate that it's coming to an end, but it's a pretty solid slate. A lot of well-balanced game, a surprising amount of meaningful games this late in the season. Some great spots for sure.
I'm not sure what mic you're using, but if you do have the ability to turn it up a little bit, that would work. Tyler, overall thoughts before we dive into this card? I mean, do we want to talk about last night? You watched it. I didn't.
Yeah, I mean, Flacco looked good. They punched their playoff ticket. If they play a night game in the playoffs, I'll probably fade them because as the night went on, the old man got tired and he couldn't throw the football in the second half. So, I mean, they could be a tough out in the playoffs. I could see them knocking somebody out in the first or second round, maybe even advancing all the way to the AFC Championship. They could be a tough beat with that defense.
Oh, yeah. I think so, too, with all the teams showing obvious flaws there in the AFC. The Browns could sneak in there and upset the apple cart, so to speak. JC, did you watch last night's games? Did you have any thoughts? I didn't watch it.
I watched a little bit of it. I was kind of keeping up with all the way through. A lot of sports going on, though. The Browns look good. It definitely felt like these Thursday night games have been so crazy, so it was nice to see one go as expected with the Jets being the Jets and then the Browns, man. It doesn't look like it was a fluke with Flacco. I mean, he's ready to play. He's ready to ball, and definitely could be scary going into these playoffs. Question for you guys. If, say, I guess he's got to win the Super Bowl, but hypothetically, say he wins the Super Bowl, does he completely lose the tag of like, oh, well, Joe Flacco won a Super Bowl? Will Trent Dilfer just stand alone with worst quarterback to win a Super Bowl?
Yes. Even if Flacco's way better than Dilfer.
I mean, Flacco actually put together like a good playoff run to where Dilfer legit stood there and let the defense do everything. And
hand the ball off.
Like, don't get me wrong, he had a great defense. Flacco did too, but like he wasn't just back there throwing for like $150 and a touchdown a game. Like he was putting up stats.
Yeah, like 350 in the playoffs.
That playoff run got him paid.
No, for sure, but that's always the argument, right? That's always the guy that gets brought up, at least for people Tyler's age, my age, and younger. I don't know. I'm sure old men just go to Dilfer, but it's just funny to think about him just losing that tag.
I think the one that it gets overshadowed because he didn't start the entire year, but he did start at least half the year, and he started into a playoff game, is the Brock Osweiler Super Bowl that they beat Carolina for, that Peyton Manning's
that's that line. Yeah.
They split that all year. So technically, Brock Osweiler can categorize as that too. And so could that broken down handicap Peyton Manning that year.
Yeah, and let's not forget Nick Foles when Carson Wentz went down in Week 10.
Good though. Like, I mean, I get it. Like the team around him was just loaded, but it wasn't this like. It's just not the same when they step in and like it's like, all right, well, you're still putting up points, you're putting up yards. It wouldn't be like when those guys stepped in. It was like, well, you're legit game managing. Like your job is to maybe get a touchdown or two a game, and the defense is going to do everything else for you.
Sure. Is my phone better, by the way?
Yeah, a little better. Thank you. The Detroit Lions are plus 5.5 in Dallas, taking on the Cowboys. The total's 52. Tyler, yesterday we talked about liking the Lions here in a spot where they could potentially be undervalued. I know everyone loves Dallas in this quote-unquote bounce-back position. If you sort by Dallas's home splits, they're so much better at home than they've been on the road. So I can see why a lot of people are on this. At the same time, I do believe that the Lions are kind of being undervalued here. I know people think it's a potential letdown spot with them coming off the big win to finally clinch the division title for the first time in 30 years. However, I do believe Dan Campbell's the type of coach that's going to get these guys going. I think they believe it's not over yet, and this is a great chance for them to make a statement against a team that they'll potentially meet in the playoffs. I haven't bet it yet, but right now, if I was looking at it, I'd take a little plus 5.5, maybe a little plus 216. JC, am I undervaluing this potential bounce back spot for the Cowboys coming off 2 big losses?
It's a great question. For me, it just feels like too many points. I'm kind of seeing the line all over the place. I was loving sit low. I like the Lions at 6. I'm seeing 4.5 at most books. MGM's offering 5.5. I think it's going to be a tight, high-scoring game. So I kind of feel like the over might be the better route, but I don't like Dallas to cover. They might win outright, but I don't think they cover that large spread.
Tyler, what do you think of this game?
I would, if I had to pick a side in this game, it would probably be Dallas, just because bounce back at home. I know when you pressure Goff, that's when he folds. You've seen it not the last couple weeks. Minnesota was able to get to him a little bit. Chicago was able to beat him in that second game. The first game, he looked like a trash can, and teams that put pressure on him just made him struggle. My worry, though, is Dallas has 2 offensive linemen on the injury report, which couldn't get me to pull the trigger. I think you see a ton of points here. I don't hate like a Jameson Williams touchdown or out on his yards because he's getting a lot more looks now. Everyone's going to run and bet Amon-Ra St. Brown, Laporta. Jameson Williams is going to break a big one against the defense. He could easily do it here. We know Bland's a decent corner. He's got all his pick sixes, but this Dallas defense gives up a ton of big plays. He could be the big play guy this week. But as for a side, I probably just end up staying away from this one.
Tyler pointing out Jameson Williams, a player to possibly target in DFS and props. JC, anything more on this one before we go to the big tilt on Sunday morning?
No, the longer I look at it, the more I really wouldn't want to pick a side in that one. I'm glad we have a full slate of games.
The Miami Dolphins, JC, are coming off their biggest win over the year over the Dallas Cowboys. That's right. They were able to prevail. The team looks strong against quality competition, but now they could arguably face another step up in competition because they travel to Baltimore to take on the Ravens, coming off arguably the biggest win of the year by anybody, as the Ravens became the first team to beat a fully healthy San Francisco 49ers team in over a year. The total here is 47. Ravens look sharp. What do you think? Do your Dolphins have a chance to go in there and upset the apple cart, grab that number 1 seed, or will the Baltimore Ravens punch their ticket to the number 1 seed, the bye, and the home field advantage?
Yeah, this one's really interesting because, I told you all on Tuesday, I already locked in Baltimore -3. It's definitely Baltimore's game to lose, being at home. However, all the reading I'm doing, experts are really liking Miami. They feel like Baltimore's on too high of a high, that it's going to be a tough game. It's absolutely going to be a tough game. I think it's a great spot for Miami to kind of prove some stuff. And, man, getting that 1 seed would be huge. But, if I got to put money down, I don't see how you could fade Baltimore. That 3.5, that 3 I thought was a perfect line. But Baltimore win by more than a field goal is dicey waters for sure. But I don't have that level of confidence in Miami just yet.
Tyler, how do you view this battle for the number 1 seed?
Yeah, I think I'd lean Baltimore. No Waddle on the field is going to be big for Miami. Most of got banged up last week too. A-Chain, I don't think he's also banged up, but he's just big player bust, so I don't see him just taking 20 carries if Mostert's got to go sit. My worry, this could be the spot where Baltimore lays a flat, and off the big win, they come out flat. Miami's able to pull it off. But it's just a weird defense for Tua to go up against. They got ball hawks in the secondary. They could also get pressure on them. They're going to get pressure on them. I think I'd have to side with Baltimore. But I'm going to have to run, fellas, so I'm going to let you 2 guys bang out the show. And my best bet is going to be the Bucs, -2.5. So good luck to you 2 guys. I shall talk to you later.
Later.
All right. And JC, you see I'm frozen up, but you can still hear me. But I'm not able to go through my windows and go through all the stats that I usually like to give out. So we'll just be talking our way through these. And, if I disappear, just filibuster for a couple seconds and I'll refresh the computer. The New England Patriots are +14 now. They're in Buffalo. They're taking on the Bills. Like I said, my computer's frozen. I can't pull up the exact projections. What is your thoughts here?
Yeah, 14 points, man. It's a lot. It definitely screams New England. It's one of those things you kind of got to look, a little bit deeper at. We all know Patriots beat them back in October. That was a different team. Like last season, Buffalo won their games by 14. They won one of the games by 14, and then the game in Buffalo, they won by 12. So this is a team that historically does dominate New England. But this New England defense, it's just been so good. If Bill is on his way out, he's going to want as many wins as he can. Is he maybe trying to sabotage just a draft pick, kind of not help New England out anyways in that regard? I don't know if that matters. I still think he's going to bring his best. He's got a chance to knock. He's got an opportunity to really do some damage to Buffalo. And in short, based on the defense that have been taking the field and the inconsistency we've seen from Buffalo, I'm going to go ahead and take the points. I'm not going to be surprised if it turns into a routing and Buffalo beats them 35-7. But being offered that defense with that many points, that's not something I'm going to pass up on. You still
All right.
Luja?
I think my computer's coming back. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, but now your screen's just black.
Okay, well, cool. No one really cares about looking at me anyways. As long as you can hear the information, that's what matters. The total's gone over in 4 of New England's last 5 games against the Bills. New England actually 16-4 straight up in their last 20 on the road against Buffalo. Of course, that's a 20-year trend. So 17 of those years have Tom Brady. Maybe we can throw that one out. The total has gone under in Buffalo's last 5 home games. Buffalo is 18-4 straight up in their last 22 games at home, but we're not really talking about straight up here. We are talking about winning by margin. So that is going to be, I'm with you, JC. If I were to play this game, I think it's better to get involved with the Patriots side. It's plus 14 for me. It's dog or pass. Gosh, I'm trying to pull up my projections right now. Well, here they are. I have this game projected at 27-14. So slight edge there towards taking the points. And that's what we have. Let me see what happens if I do this. Now I come back. Oh, well, let's just leave this here. Okay. Anything more on the Patriots and the Bills before we move on?
I was going to say it's going to be 37 and clear. And given that these are two, Northeastern teams, I don't expect that weather affecting the game too much.
All right. This line moved against me. I bet the Chicago Bears -3. The Chicago Bears are now -2.5.
Wow.
Man, I wish I would have waited. Usually we've been getting the better of the number when we bet early, but not the case in this game. But Chicago's 5-0 against the spread in their last 5 at home against Atlanta, and they've won the game 6 out of the last 7 times. The total's gone under in 9 of 11's Atlanta's last 11 road games, JC, and we've seen how much worse Desmond Ridder / Taylor Heineke is outside of that dome. We made the mistake of going against the Falcons last week when they hosted the Colts. But I'm right back on it. I'm fading the Falcons once again, and I'm doing that upon the strength of that improved Chicago defense. I think they're going to be able to stop the run. When Atlanta can't run, they can't get the things where they want to go on offense. On the other side, Justin Fields is that type of player that you can't prepare for. We know what's going on in there in Chicago. If Fields isn't playing for his job, he's definitely auditioning to see where he's going to end up, and he'd like to garner up as much interest as possible. So I expect to see some good motivation here on the Chicago side. I even wonder if Eberflus, I would have thought this was crazy earlier, but could potentially keep the job with how much he's a defensive head coach. They've improved that defense. So I think the motivation's about even, right? Atlanta's still fighting for a playoff spot, but I don't think Chicago's dead in the water yet. I like Chicago to win this game. JC, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I'm always going to struggle to place a wager in a game the Falcons are playing, but you bring up all the right points, with the biggest one, of course, being Atlanta outdoors, and especially it's going to be freezing in Chicago. So seeing that they don't deal well with the elements, I think is enough of a knock to kind of pull the trigger on this one, because we've just seen such an inconsistent play, right? I mean, we were all kind of shocked by that performance last week. I doubt we see it twice in a row. And like you said, if the Bears defense can just hold strong, the offense shouldn't have to do too much to pull out a win. And again, as you said, Justin Fields trending in the right direction, should be a blowout spot. I don't think if Chicago wins, I don't think it's close. I think you may even grab an alt line, maybe grab Chicago to win by a touchdown.
All right, we both like the Bears in that one. Scary thought to be backing that team, but that's where we are here in Week 17. The Tennessee Titans are +4 taking on the Houston Texans. Totals 44. The game will be played in Houston. I'm expecting C.J. Stroud will be back for the Houston Texans, and we've seen how much he means to that team. They still do have some injury concerns, especially with those weapons, but Houston coming off the win. The total's gone over in 6 of Tennessee's last 7 games in Houston. Tennessee's 4-1 in their last 5 visits to Houston, and they're 5-1. Houston's 5-1 against the spread, however, in their last 6 against Tennessee. So when Houston wasn't good and Tennessee was the better team, Tennessee was getting the win, but the Texans were keeping this close and covering the spread. Now we flip the script here, JC, as the Texans come in as the favored team. The Texans come in with playoff hopes, and the Titans are the one whose season is done and are looking ahead to next year. You're in Tennessee. What's going on with Will Levis? He's playing?
That's what I was about to ask you because I wasn't positive. It's been so back and forth.
Okay, I can look it up now too with my computer running again. So you break down the game. I'm going to pull up this injury report.
Yeah. Memphis is barely in Tennessee, so they don't really mess around with the Predators or the Titans too much. They kind of stand alone with the Grizzlies. I mean, this definitely does seem like a great spot in taking the Texans. Tennessee has not looked good. Houston hasn't looked good, but that's been when they've been missing Stroud. So yes, with Tank Dell out, that still hurts them. But I think with how poor performance we've seen from the Titans, CJ Stroud should be enough to get the job done. I mean, Tennessee put up at home, they could only manage 17 on Seattle, 16 when they beat the Texans. And then you look at the game against Miami, they only scored 14 points through 3 quarters and 10 minutes. So I just don't see Houston should be able to outpace this Tennessee defense. And even if, I just don't see Tennessee putting together performance good enough to beat the Texans, especially with the Texans looking to take a playoff spot. Hang on to it, I should say.
Notable names here is the Texans are really hurt on their defensive line. Will Anderson Jr., Malik Collins, these are all defensive linemen. Jonathan Greenard, Sheldon Rankins, all did not practice the last 2 days. So you can see that Texans line is beat up. However, good news, if you do like the Texans, Laramie Tunsil, CJ Stroud, Nico Collins, all full participants. And I see Shaq Mason and Denzel Perryman, linebacker and a guard, both were limited. So we'd expect to see those 2 men back. On the Titans side, it looks like Will Levis was a full participant in practice both days. So I think that he will get the start. I don't.
Well, I know he's healthy, but I wasn't sure if they were going to start him.
They sat him last week because of injury, though, right?
Yes, but I still didn't know. But yeah, I just looked it up, and it does look like they're still going to ride with Levis.
I don't see why they wouldn't. I mean, it would really be surprising to me. They're already eliminated. They need to get this kid some reps and see what they have there. And an opportunity for him to make some noise and let them know that this isn't the year to draft a QB. So you could see why there's concerns for the Texans looking at that injury report. Yeah. This does seem a great spot for Mike Vrabel and the Texans, a team that can usually outperforms the spread as an underdog and underperforms as a favorite. So we're getting, a team that we like to back as a favorite. To me, it's Titans or pass, JC, and right now I'm going to end up passing. Is there anything you think I'm missing here and the reason I should get involved?
No, I mean, it is still a gross game just due to all those injuries. And like you said, just that Vrabel aspect, and he's certainly not one to roll over on a season. We'll see if I get there come Sunday, but I definitely, it's Texans or pass for me.
All right. Yeah, Tyler, we're not worried about it. JC and we've created great chemistry over these times doing these shows together. Robert, I don't know if this is a bold statement, but I like to see you taking a stand here. He says CJ Stroud dominating game incoming. He will remind people of why he's rookie of the year. If anyone can give them problems, it's going to be the defense of the Tennessee Titans. But we've seen that this team is better at stopping the run and not the pass. So it's another matchup advantage that the Texans have, as they've been better moving the ball through the air than they have on the ground this year. How do I know that? Because Dameon Pierce was one of my top drafted players, and he has been an absolute disappointment losing that job to Devin Singletary. When the Texans move the ball, it's through the air. So we can see good matchup reasons for both sides. At the end of the day, JC, I'm fine staying away from this one. If I'm looking at my projections, where did I have this game? And at this point of the year, it does get tough with all these injuries. I had this as a 4.5 Texans win, slightly going under. So I think, if you feel like you have a good, solid read on this game, you've been paying more attention to these teams than we have, you can get involved. But I think they've got a great chance. I think they did a good job setting this number. Let's talk about my favorite team, JC. I don't know if you can see. I lowered the resolution on my camera, but in all this blurriness, this is a Raiders logo, and the Raiders are catching 3.5 in Indianapolis, a team that we've matched up well against, even when we were not good. When I'm looking at some trends here for the Las Vegas Raiders, they're 5-1 against the spread in their last 6 traveling to Indianapolis. And sometimes we throw this out, but I think it shows that even when the Raiders are bad, they've matched up well against this team because what do they travel every other year? Or, not very often. Correct. And we know the Colts were much better during this time period than the Raiders, but the Raiders still able to get the cover. The total's gone over 5 of the last 6 times that these two teams have played. I guess that's not surprising. We're seeing another low total here today. Indy has also gone over in 7 of their last 8 home games. So the trends are going to tell you to take Las Vegas and the over. I have this as a 2.5 point Colts win here, JC, at 22-20. My numbers say to take the Raiders. My heart says to take the Raiders. The question is that be a letdown after that big Christmas Day win over their hated rivals, the Kansas City Chiefs?
Yeah, it's a tough one. Especially given how the Raiders came up with 20 points last week. However, last week we wondered if we didn't think there was any way they could come up with a win against Kansas City after their huge win against the Chargers. So I'm not putting too much stock into that. My concern for the Raiders is how are they going to keep up with an Indianapolis team that can score a lot of points, especially when at home. So I really like the over here. I think that's a great bet. This Raiders team is just a dog you can never count out. So there's a concern there. I don't know. 3.5. It's also, kind of a number you got to think twice on. So I really don't have a good side here. The gut says Indianapolis, but I agree. I think the numbers would suggest Vegas. But for me, I'll probably just be betting the over.
All right. Yeah, I like the Raiders plus the points here, but of course that is a potential homer take. Things that are keeping me off, of course, are the short week potential letdown spot here. Indianapolis looked pretty bad against Atlanta, and I know this sounds crazy, but I would say our defenses are close to equal. I wonder how much being at home though really gives them that boost. So Raiders in a dome, we'll see how it goes, but I have faith in Patrick Graham to get it done. I like taking the points, but I haven't made that an official bet. The Carolina Panthers are +4. They're in Jacksonville. They're taking on the beleaguered Jaguars, who have lost 4 games in a row. At one point, JC, this team was 8-3. Maybe thinking about getting a top seed in the topsy-turvy AFC. Now they're fighting to win their division. Now they're fighting for a playoff spot. This seems like a good spot, taking on the woeful Panthers. But since making the coaching change and the return of J.C. Horn, the Panthers have been, I would say, average. So this isn't a walkover team. This isn't like playing the Detroit Pistons in the NBA. I mean, this line shows it, right? I see some 13.5s. I see a 14 on the board. I see a 6.5. The Panthers are only catching 4 on the road, which tells you the odds makers and the market believe that this Panthers team has improved. and this Jaguars team has regressed. Why have the Jaguars regressed? Yes, injuries. Trevor Lawrence isn't 100%. You could argue that Trevor Lawrence shouldn't be out there, but most likely he's going to hobble out there again, but he hasn't been the same player. And we've talked about this so much, without Christian Kirk, Calvin Ridley, although he looked great in camp, he's shown that I don't know if he can really shoulder the duties as the true number one receiver. And I've heard some arguments of the routes that Peterson has him running, but regardless, we're not getting that type of production.
I got some breaking news, Fred.
Jump in.
Trevor Lawrence ruled out. Bradford will start.
Cool. All right, let's redo this then. How do we think what is that a downgrade? The way Lawrence was playing, it can't be more than a point or two.
Yeah, I completely agree because it was funny. So this is as of like 30 minutes ago. So like broke right as we were jumping on. And I expected some numbers to be locked, but they're not. And I think you're absolutely right because
what was this line earlier? Let's see how much it moved. Okay, so it moved 2.5 points. It was 6.5 when I did the playbook earlier this week.
It opened at 7. Yeah. Okay, 6.5, 7. So I think it was down at 3.5.
The 7 that has to be a market move though.
Yeah.
And I can see why people are not trusting the Jaguars to win by margin. Okay, but let's analyze it now. If you already got a bet at +7, congratulations. You have that +6.5, congratulations. But for the people who have yet to get involved in this game, CJ Beathard under center, Jaguars team hurting on their offensive line. They got a bunch of backups going out there. Coming against the Carolina Panthers team that has nothing to lose. How do you approach this one, JC?
This is really tough. Because I was kind of having some faith in the Jaguars, seeing that they're trying to cling on to that playoff spot. And I thought, if Lawrence is playing, he's going to have that motivation. But Panthers have been scrappy. I mean, I don't know if I'd call them decent, if they just kind of left into some spots, but they're playing well compared to what we saw earlier in the season. However, Beathard's looked great in the tiny amount of time he's had under center for the Jaguars. So it probably is an upgrade for Jacksonville. And I don't know. I don't know if I get there, but I have a heavy lean towards Jacksonville. It's only got to win by a touchdown. They're in Duval. The Panthers
where they've been bad this year, though. They're the opposite of the Cowboys. They've been better on the road this year.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't give that. I mean, they just kind of had a weird season. Just started off fine, and then things fell apart after London, and now Lawrence has been hurt, so that's affected it. So I don't give that number as much credence as maybe I should.
All right, I'm with you. If I'm going to bet this game, I will bet the Jaguars. I'm fine staying away from it. A game I'm considering betting, JC, but I haven't got there yet, is the Los Angeles Rams. We've talked about liking some underdogs here so far, namely the Patriots +14. You saw me leaning towards the Titans catching that 4. I like the Raiders catching 3.5, but I think I want to lay it in this game, JC, against the New York Giants. Now they made the switch to Tyrod Taylor, and people are going to say that's an upgrade. I don't know if that's the case. I mean, I know DeVito had one bad game, but considering how he was playing before that, he was doing pretty well.
Yeah.
And what have we seen from Taylor at age 34 to indicate he's going to be any better than he was? On the other side, Matthew Stafford's 4th in QBR this year, right? So he's playing like a top 5 QB again. He's got those weapons. He has one of the best play callers in the game. I think we've forgotten, because that Rams defense got bad, how good McVay is at designing offense here. This is one of the ones where I like the favorite, but we know that road favorites can be tricky, JC. What do you think?
Yeah, definitely a tough one. I mean, Rams, they're trying to cling on to that 6th playoff spot, which is huge, right? There's, 5 teams kind of bidding for that 6, 7 spot, and there's a big difference because the 7th seed is going to have to go to Philly, and no one wants to do that. At least you grab the 6, you're probably going to Detroit, which will give you a fighting chance. This Ram team's been really scrappy. They've won 5 in a row at the spread. And then you look over at the Giants, and they've won 4 of their last 5 at their spread.
And, they look pretty great in that Philly game, but you don't want to overreact to a divisional game and a banged up Eagles team. But I'm going to need more than a touchdown to take the Giants. So I agree with you. I really like this Rams team right now. I think they can cause some noise in the playoffs, but they're going to need to win these next 2 games to be in a position to do that. So I'll go ahead. I'll lay the 6 and take the Rams.
Yeah, we agree there. It's one of the few favorites we agree on. Here's the favorite that I can't get to, JC, and it's the Philadelphia Eagles, who are laying 12. Totals 48.5. 12 is a huge number to begin with, and I think we have a lot of questions about Philadelphia. And I don't think that they're a bad team. I think the health has really destroyed this team. And a lot of times when we talk about, the curse of losing the Super Bowl, it's getting beat up and then having to run it back. And you look at the injuries that this defense has suffered. They're missing people on all 3 levels of their defense, particularly in the secondary, which hasn't been nearly as good as it was last year. And I also talked about Trevor carrying an injury, another quarterback that I don't believe is playing healthy, but is willing his way through it, is Jalen Hurts. So while you give him credit for getting out there, you do have to downgrade him. He's not the same player he was last year until he actually started to get some of those nagging injuries, and it feels like it's the same, and it's all over his body. He's hurt shoulder, hurt knee, right? I mean, the guy's getting beat up there. So rough scene there, especially behind that great offensive line that the Philadelphia Eagles have. I didn't bet this. If I were to bet it, I would take the plus 12. At the same time, that Cardinals defense is so bad. Maybe this is the week that the Philadelphia Eagles offense turns it around. I know they started to gain some momentum when they blew out the Giants last week, but yet they still didn't cover the closing number. Cardinals, you could argue, have a better offense than the Giants. It'd be a tough argument, but they definitely have a better quarterback at this point. I can see them putting up points here. I like the Cardinals plus 12, but I didn't bet it. What do you think?
It's definitely Cardinals or Pats. I don't know how you could possibly lay this many points on the Eagles, given how they have been playing. It's an important game for Philly to win, because I believe if they do so, they should have the division locked in. And so I think it's definitely, I don't think they're going to get upset, but I don't see them going the distance to covering this large number. Because you take care of business in the first half, and then you can start resting guys like Hurts, rest him next week, and you don't want to, but you also don't want to lose this game and be in a position where you're going to have to beat the Giants that just gave you a run for your money. So I really like maybe Philly first half. And let me take a quick look here and see what that number is. But I would definitely lean taking the points in the Cardinals halves. Here we go. 7. Eagles 7 first half. That might get me there. I think that's probably a better bet. But it's scary betting the Eagles right now. I'll just say that, and I don't know what's going to happen to them when playoffs roll around.
We've been preaching being selective in the NBA all week, and that's a situational thing where just having years of experience. At the same time, I feel that way about the NFL at this point in the season. For different reasons. In the NBA, I'm staying away because I can't figure out these guys' motivations and who's got their mind on what. In the NFL, the reason I'm skeptical at this point of the year is I believe that with all the numerical information out there, it's hard for me to project an edge on these games because I feel like these numbers are dialed in. I feel like the original lines are sharper, and I feel like the markets got sharper as we are, collectively shaping these numbers by betting into them early in the week. And so not only is the NFL to me the sharpest market in the world, this is the sharpest time of the sharpest market.
Right.
Just a little bit of disclaimer there if you're not upset that you haven't been able to fill out a 14-team parlay watching the show so far. One game that I did bet, however, JC, and this is tough because I do enjoy these trends, especially team to team, but I took the Tampa Bay Buccaneers against the New Orleans Saints, and you say, well, what trend are you worried about? And I'm going to tell you, New Orleans 5-0 against their spread in their last 5 traveling to Tampa Bay. However, the Mike Evans stopper, Marshawn Lattimore, will be out for the New Orleans Saints. And to me, a lot of the Saints statistics are fool's gold. Derek Carr, and I knew this from this Raiders fandom, he gets a lot of garbage time stats. So that's going to bump up their yards per play. That's going to bump up their EPA. That's going to bump up their offensive DVOA, where I don't really think they're that good. In crunch time, or not crunch time, but when the game's being decided, when they're not working against the weaker defenses that have had a lead, I don't trust the Saints to get it done. At the same time, we're seeing what I believe is the nadir of Baker Mayfield's performance. I really think, and we've talked about it earlier, guys playing with injuries. I don't think Jalen Hurts is as bad as he's looked this year. I think that next year he's going to come back great. I don't think Trevor Lawrence is as bad as he's looked over the last 4 weeks. I think he's going to come back great. And I think that Baker really cost himself a lot of money and even more public perception by playing banged up that last year with Cleveland. Then he got some time with Sean McVay. I talked about how much I admire his ability to teach the quarterback position, and he's taken that to Tampa Bay, where he finally has weapons. This Buccaneers is flying. They're flying. They've got some confidence. They've got some momentum. They have a competent head coach. I know people don't love Bowles, but he can still dial up a defense, and I think he's got the advantage here over Dennis Allen. Give me Baker Mayfield and the Fighting Buccaneers over the Saints. And in fact, I believe this line would be 3.5 if it wasn't for the fact that the Saints almost always beat the Buccaneers. And JC, I hate betting against the streaks. I usually want to bet on the streaks, but I did it here. I took the Bucs. What do you think?
I'm struggling with this one because by all measures, this is the easiest bet of the week. I mean, like you said, there is how New Orleans performed against the Buccaneers, but I mean, the Buccaneers have looked like world beaters the last 4 weeks, and it's 2.5. They got to win by a field goal. That doesn't seem that crazy. But New Orleans, it's kind of like you were just talking about a second ago with the experience betting. A bet this easy feels like it's got to be a fade. Just something about it. It just, the inconsistent play from New Orleans, again, makes it seem like all the more reason to bet Tampa Bay, but it just kind of feels like the spot where they go into Tampa Bay and wreak havoc and make things extremely difficult for Baker Mayfield. And it's one of those, I mean, there's a fair amount of stats to go both ways, but it does seem crazy to consider New Orleans. And for that reason, probably just kind of stay off of it. But that's where I'm at on it. And I just feel like Tampa Bay -2.5 feels too easy. And when it's too easy, it's normally a fade spot, or should be at least.
All right. Well, root for me then, because I've already placed -2.5. The San Francisco 49ers are -13.5. They're looking to bounce back after that primetime loss against the Baltimore Ravens. They will be on a short week. The Commanders at home catching points. The total here is 50. When I'm looking at what's happened when these teams have been playing, these teams have been going over, JC. San Francisco's gone over 4 of their last 5, and Washington's gone over 5 of their last 6. Does that surprise me? No, especially not on the Washington side, where this team, they traded away, their 2, I don't want to say top defensive linemen, because I don't know what Chase Young really was doing for that team. But we've seen how much Montez Sweat means to the Bears. So that was a big loss there. And this team didn't have a good secondary to begin with. So Washington's been giving up points. That allows them to work in the, against the prevent, and they work against softer defenses. It will be Jacoby Brissett, not Sam Howell, which kind of surprised me. But I guess if you're a Washington backer, that makes a little more sense. If you're a Washington fan, it doesn't make any sense to me at all. I'm completely off of this game unless I wanted to play the over 50. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, the over seems like a good bet, but it is concerning with Brissett in there and not Howell, just because, number one, let me just start by saying I love San Francisco in this spot. I think this should be an easy cover. They are coming off that terrible loss. They now find themselves in a 3-way tie for the number 1 spot in the NFC, so they're going to need to win both these games to hang on to it.
So it's not going to be the coasting position they hope they'd find themselves in. So I love San Francisco. They'll absolutely do their part to carry this over. What I was really hoping for was a Washington team trailing, and we get gunslinger Sam Howell in there to help get some garbage time points to carry this over. Looks a little bit different with Brissett, but knowing what little Washington will need to do to carry this game to 50 points, I think it's probably still a pretty good bet.
The Pittsburgh Steelers are plus 3.5 in Seattle, taking on Seahawks. The total's 41. Mason Rudolph will start for the Pittsburgh Steelers. JC, I think this is the time to take advantage to sell high on the Pittsburgh Steelers. Of course, they're a dog here, and we usually like Pittsburgh as a dog, but Seattle 5-0 against the spread in their last 5 times hosting Pittsburgh. That's a tough travel spot there. I do believe the Seahawks get it right. I haven't bet it yet, but if I were to bet it, I like the Seattle Seahawks. In my projections, I have this game at a 4.5 point win for the Seahawks. The line is only 3.5. I like the Hawks. What do you think?
What did I tell you last week, Thread?
You're never betting against Tomlin as a dog again?
Never going to bet against Tomlin as a dog again. I kind of lean Pittsburgh. I'm probably not going to place the bet, but I mean, they're playing great football right now. Seattle kind of looks like they turned things around after that 4-game losing streak. But I mean, they edged out Tennessee, and I think Pittsburgh's a much better team than that. Tomlin's a dog. There is the quandary of playing in Seattle. I lean Pittsburgh, but as juicy as Seattle minus 3.5 is, there's no way I'm doing that. I think there's a real chance Tomlin finishes this season 10-7 and carries the Steelers to get another playoff appearance.
Yeah, we're opposite here. I think Mason Rudolph's going to show why he's been on the bench for all these years. But I don't think either of us are going to have money involved. So just some friendly bragging rights involved in that game. The final point I would say is on a total of 41, 3.5 is so much more valuable than on a total of 50, right? Which is another reason I'm staying off. If I'm laying 3.5, I want to do it in a high total game.
Yeah.
Right. The lower the total, the more that hook really becomes so much more valuable. And I haven't done it, but I would say, compared to a 51, that hook's got to be worth at least 5 to 8 cents to catch that 3.5 there in a game that could easily be a 22-20 Seattle Seahawks win, right?
Yeah. I can
see it being a really close game, so it's tough for me to get there. But if I'm forced to pick a side, give me the Seattle Seahawks, the Cincinnati Bengals.
I was going to say real quick just that I think the under is probably a really good play there. Knowing what Pittsburgh's defense is going to do, and if you really think Mason Rudolph is not the player he appeared to be last week, he's probably not going to make that many points, especially in Seattle. So under 41.5 should be a pretty easy bet on Sunday.
All right. I had this game projected at 38.5, so I do show an edge to the under, as well as this game trending under, as the total has gone under in 6 of the Steelers' last 7 road games. Maybe we stay away from this, Red JC. Just bet an under and be haters and root for everybody's fantasy dreams to be ruined with the final score of 6-3. The Cincinnati Bengals are plus 6.5 in Kansas City, taking on the Chiefs. A little love for the Bengals in the market, and I think that's warranted. How can you expect the Chiefs to win by margin when the offense is sputtering the way that it is right now? I think it's crazy to say. The Raiders actually have a better defense than the Bengals right now, with those 2 injuries that I kept harping on last week, or the reason I couldn't get there with the Bengals against the Steelers, even though I love that spot and I really wanted to bet on Jake Browning. Same reason here. The thing is Andy Reid even going to be able to take advantage of that run defense? We know he doesn't like to run the ball. This seems like a lot of points. I haven't bet it yet, and boy, I missed it because I would have much rather had the plus 7. But I think it's Bengals or pass here. I don't trust the Chiefs to win by margin. The only question is the Bengals defense looked pretty bad. Mason Rudolph tore him up. Is this a get-right spot for Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs?
I mean, we kind of been looking for a get right spot for the Chiefs for a while now.
Haven't we?
They've lost 5 of their last 6 at the spread. It's been ugly, and I don't know why we think this is suddenly where it's going to happen. Especially needing a touchdown to cover. You look at the Cincinnati side, everyone kind of wants to write off Browning after last week, and while I don't think he's the quarterback he maybe appeared to be 3 weeks prior, I don't think he's as bad as he was against Pittsburgh. So I think he's going to go out there, have a competent performance. Cincinnati still got a chance at a playoff spot, so they still have plenty to play for. And Kansas City, for whatever it's worth, they're pretty much locked into that 3 seed. So Bengals are going to give them a run. They're going to make things difficult, and I think a 6.5 point cover is not that much to ask for.
All right. We both like the Bengals. The Los Angeles Chargers are now only +3. Well, it's juiced. 3.5, depending on what book you're looking at. In Denver, taking on the Broncos, total 37.5. JC, the biggest news of the week. And Tyler and I got a chance to discuss it yesterday, but I haven't heard your thoughts yet. Probably the perfect time as we're discussing the Denver Broncos. Were you shocked? Were you surprised? And how do you think that the Russell Wilson benching affects this Broncos team?
Was I surprised? I was a little surprised. Yeah, I was. Just because it's not like they got a great option. Stidham, it's kind of just bounced around and not shown anything impressive. I've said, even when I was hot on the Broncos during their run, I said it wasn't because of Wilson. He had terrible stat lines. He was the defense that kind of got some points, made things easy for Wilson. He hasn't looked great. And I understand something's got to change when you've lost 3 of your last 4 and you pretty much blew your shot at the playoffs. But it just, I don't know. I mean, if you really look into it and read all the stuff about this just being so that he can be healthy so they can cut him, that kind of makes sense. But it's troubling for Denver, and I don't know where they go from here. And I don't know why they did it against the Chargers. Like, that's going to be a pretty easy win. And now I'm sure you kind of shook up the locker room. You got to trust Sean Payton and hope he did it for the best and not the worst. But it's I got a little bit. I like Denver a lot less this week, considering all they have going on over there.
Interesting. So I'm the exact opposite. I think it's going to be the equivalent of a new coach bump. I don't think Russell Wilson was well liked in the locker room. I think he alienated teammates right off the bat. And I also believe that this is why statistics and fantasy football can be completely misleading, maybe more than any other sport. That's a conversation for another day. But Russell Wilson had really similar numbers to Patrick Mahomes. If you just look at the yards he's thrown for, touchdown to interception ratio, yards per play, right? The tape doesn't show that, though. It feels like Mahomes, right, is making all these great throws and his receivers are letting him down. And I believe that the Broncos skill positions are overvalued. I don't think Jerry Jeudy's really that good. I think Cortland Sutton's excellent, but he's not going to be playing this game. Dulcich was a guy that we got really excited about for a nice little run last year in DFS, but hasn't shown a lot. And as good as the running backs are, I don't think it's anything that stands out above most of the other teams in the NFL. So I'm down talking the Broncos here, JC, to end up telling you, though, I love the Broncos in the spot, and the fact that it's moved to 3, I'm even more excited about. I think that you're going to get a bit of a new coach bump with the new quarterback. I think he's more popular in the locker room. I also think that there's I don't know if addition by subtraction is the right word, but when the playbook gets pared down, we should see some of the Broncos' better plays. As you know, a lot of Peyton's fine, but I'd say a little bit of his reputation and a little bit of the feeling about this team going into the next year is going to be decided on how this team performs in the next 2 weeks. If he can get Stidham out there and have a strong performance, then you got to be pretty positive that, hey, we messed up on this Denver deal, this Russell Wilson deal, but we're still okay as a franchise. We got the right coach, and he's going to get things done for us. If it looks bad, right? And then, oh boy, there's a little bit more consternation. Hey, do we even have the right coach in here? Because this was a ballsy move by Sean Payton. He could have easily ridden this out and done this in the offseason and just got it lost on a Friday news dump when people aren't paying as much attention to the NFL. Now, supposedly they were worried about him getting hurt and his contract automatically being guaranteed. But regardless, I know I've talked bad about the Broncos overall, but I think this is a great spot for them, and I'm down to fade the Chargers here. I like the Broncos -3. The final thought on this, JC, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. So somebody's going to get a bargain on Russell Wilson because I believe, and maybe I'm wrong here, I'm not an NFL cap expert, but the money that Wilson receives will offset, right? So he's guaranteed $37 million by Denver next year, right? Well, Denver's going to pay him whatever he doesn't receive on a contract with a different team if he gets cut, which is what I expect. That means that Russell and the new team have no incentive to give him anything beyond the veteran minimum because he's getting 37 no matter what. He could go to any team on the vet minimum. Where would you like to see Wilson? Do you think he could help a team out, or is his time done?
I don't think he's the worst quarterback in this league. So I definitely think there are some teams that could use him and be improved. I do not have faith in much more than a playoff appearance. I think you put him in the right situation with a lot of talent. I think there's a chance he can do something nice, winning record. But we just haven't seen anything from him that has shown the caliber of talent that we saw from him in Seattle. I heard rumor of New England, which sounds like Cam Newton all over again. Maybe somewhere like New Orleans, where they're paying a quarterback a lot of money. They don't want to be playing for him, and they got a little bit of talent. I hope he finds something, and I hope this isn't the last time we see Russell Wilson, but I don't have much faith in him.
I got to say Pittsburgh and Las Vegas are also two options there.
Pittsburgh, I don't. You think Tomlin would take him?
Yeah, on a vet minimum. Yeah.
I just don't. The culture difference. I don't know if that would jive with Tomlin.
I think he would. I think he'd whip him in shape. Same thing with Belichick. I think they'll take a cheesy nerd.
So another question too that you were saying, and obviously you've heard all over the media about the locker room and Wilson not being liked. Like, where's this coming from, other than the fact that we just all know he's a bit of a goofball?
That's a good point.
So I said no. The other thing that's worth mentioning on this game, though, is the Chargers are kind of on a little bit of an incline. Like, they seem to be playing better and better. Not saying I'd go as far as to bet them, but that would also be an additional concern for why I would stay off Denver.
Yeah. That's fine. I do like Denver here, though. I think I'm going to bet it here at -3. The Green Bay Packers are now +1. The Minnesota Vikings have taken a little bit of money. The total is 43.5 here. JC, when we're looking at this team, the total's gone over in Green Bay's last 5 games, but the total's gone under in Minnesota's 7 of their last 9 games at home against Green Bay. Minnesota also 5-2 against the spread in their last 7 games at home against Green Bay. The NFC North is still up for grabs. Who do you like?
I love Minnesota. That's got to be the bet of the week.
Green Bay. Really? Why?
Green Bay looked terrible. I mean, they nearly choked away a game to Carolina. They lost to the Buccaneers. They lost to the Giants. They beat a Kansas City team that we all got questions about now. And it's a divisional game, so you got to add that into it. They slipped a little bit their last couple games, allowing almost 30 to both Detroit and Cincinnati is not what we've seen from this Minnesota defense. So I do believe they're better than that. And when you look at the head-to-head, I mean, it's always going to be a tight game between these two. I know they split their last 4. Minnesota's got that edge in their last 6. So with spread, it's basically a pick 'em. I'm going with
the home team that's got the better defense, that's got an opportunity to improve their playoff standing and knock a divisional rival out of the playoffs, or any hope they had to make the playoffs would be gone at least.
Jaron Hall, huh?
Jaron Hall.
All right. What's your best bet for the week?
I got my picks here. Yeah, I'm gonna take Minnesota, man. I mean, that's the one that jumps out the most to me. I think there's quite a few solid plays like Patriots in San Francisco, but I mean, when you're talking money line favorite at home, I love it.
All right, give me the Chicago Bears. I'm going to continue what I've done all month, and that's fade dome teams outside in December. I think the Chicago Bears has improved. I think they have something to play for on both sides of the ball. And since Montez Sweat has been there, they've been able to get it done. If Atlanta can't run the ball, they're not going to be able to do anything on offense. Justin Fields going to have a fairly good performance against these Falcons. Give me the Chicago Bears -3. JC, final thoughts on week 17? Anything else you want to discuss?
No, not too much, man. It's been a crazy season. I think it's gonna be a great slate. I'm really gonna have to relook at these picks because I chose a lot of favorites, and I mean it's been dogs and overs have kind of been the trends in recent weeks. So I'm gonna have to reassess and hopefully put together another winning week.
All right, there you have it. And we will be back on Tuesday again this week because we'll take New Year's Day off, and we'll discuss the slate next Tuesday here. JC and I and Tyler will be reviewing what we said and looking ahead to the last week of the season, JC. And then it'll be playoff time, and I know people will be excited about that. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Please give us the thumbs up. Bet the Bears. Who was your best bet again? I'm sorry.
Vikings.
Bet the Vikings and nuke the house.